Hi everyone, this is Sheila Purim with Franchise Wizards. We are a franchise consulting firm that can help anyone who wants to invest in a new business in the United States. And today I have here with us Mr. Bobby Chung, which I'll introduce very shortly. The goal of this interview with Bobby Chung is to help, and this is for who this video is for. We are targeting here with this interview the international investors that would like to move into the US with the E-2 visa. If you don't know what the E-2 visa is, it is basically an entrepreneur visa that allows you to move to the US by starting a new business in the country. Now, there are quite a few requirements for the E-2 visa, and there are some nuances about the process. And Bobby Chung, who is here with us, he's an immigration attorney, is specialized in E-2 visa, EB-5, green cards, basically the investment visas overall. And I'm asked Bobby to answer some questions and just help all the investors understand more about the E-2 visa. So thank you again, Bobby, for being here with us. I want to share your bio. So Bobby Chung, before starting his private practice, which has been open for over 16 years now, he served the U.S. Department of Justice, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, and he was assisting federal judges in adjudicating immigration cases. And his private practice is based in Los Angeles, California. He represents clients all over the U.S., in all the 50 states, as well as worldwide. So, Bobby, thank you so much again. And I have a few questions for you. Maybe we can start with the very basic and fundamental questions. So my first question is, what is the E-2 visa?
Well, first of all, thank you, Sheila, for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be happy to answer your question. The E2 Investor Visa is a temporary visa designed specifically for foreign entrepreneurs to move to the United States based on making a business investment in the US, and that can be starting a new business or purchasing a qualifying existing business. And the E2 visa allows the entrepreneur, the investor, to bring his or her spouse and minor dependent children with them to the United States.
Excellent. But can you talk a little bit about who can apply?
Absolutely. So the E2 visa is a bit unique that it is what's called treaty-based visa, meaning that the foreign country must have a specific treaty with the United States in order for their citizens to apply for the E2 visa. Currently, out of approximately 200 countries in the world, 80 countries have the E2 treaty with the United States. So, first question is the person must be a citizen of a treaty country in order to apply for an E2 visa. Now, some people have multiple citizenship. They have a citizenship that is not a treaty country, but another citizenship they have is a qualifying treaty country. As long as they have at least one citizenship eligible for E2 visa, they can qualify.
Okay, can you give us some examples, Bobby, of some of the treaty countries?
Absolutely. There are so many. For example, many Western European countries like Italy, Austria, Poland, England, France, Italy, Australia, Canada, many, many.
Okay, excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the main requirements for the visa?
Absolutely. There are four key requirements for E2 visa. First, you have to be from a treaty country. And second, the entrepreneur has to make what's called a substantial investment in the United States business. And third, the business has to be qualifying. It has to be a business that creates jobs for American workers and a business that is capable of generating more than sufficient income to comfortably support the entrepreneur and his or her family in the United States. And fourth, the entrepreneur needs to demonstrate sufficient skills and ability to credibly be able to manage and operate a business in the United States.
Excellent, Bobby. And for how long does this visa last? And the second question is, can that be renewed? How many times? I know that's a very common question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The E2 visa, it is a temporary visa, so it's not U.S. citizenship, it's not green card. It's a temporary visa issued in 2 to 5 year increments. There's a lot of confusion in among the public about how long E2 visa is valid for. A lot of people have the misunderstanding that it's only limited to 2 years. It really depends on your country of citizenship. For example, Italians get a 5-year E2 visa, Australians get a 4-year E2 visa, um,
Mm-hmm.
Polish get 1-year E2 visa. It varies, depends on the country of citizenship. Whatever the length of the E2 visa granted, it is renewable in 2 to 5 year increments indefinitely, as long as they continue to own and operate a genuine business in the United States. I have clients who've been living in the United States for over 20 years on E2 visa through repeated renewals. The US government does not want the entrepreneur to leave and close their business if they're doing well, because it creates
Mm-hmm.
jobs for Americans.
Bobby, one question also is there a limit in the number of people that can come every year with the H visa or kind of a quota per nationality? Do you
Yeah,
know?
this is a very important question because some U.S. visas, like the very popular H-1B working visa, has an annual quota, and once the quota is exceeded, doesn't matter how strong your qualifications are, you can't apply. Luckily, E-2 visa has no quota; it's unlimited,
Excellent.
and I think it's intentional because they want to encourage more and more people to invest in the United States.
Perfect. Okay. Let's move and start talking about the business because there are many nuances about what types of businesses
Mhm.
would qualify for the visa. The first question is, you did talk about one of the key requirements being the fact that the person needs to make substantial investment in the business. What does that mean? What is the minimum investment number?
Yes, there's tremendous uncertainty or confusion about how much investment amount is required to qualify for the E2 visa. The law is super ambiguous, simply states the person has to make a substantial investment. And it was intentionally left ambiguous because the US immigration, they want to make sure the entrepreneur's investment amount is appropriate for that type of business to ensure its
Okay.
success. Yeah. So depending on the type of business, if it's a big business, they might expect many hundreds of thousands of dollars. If it's a very small business, maybe 100,000 is more than sufficient. Depends on the business model. But generally speaking, based on my experience, I typically recommend a budget of at least 100,000 to have a good E2 visa case. It's possible to qualify with less. I've gotten approval for
Mhm.
much less, but to be safe, I recommend a $100,000 budget.
And can that be applied in partnership? Can someone have a business partner with this investment budget?
The answer is absolutely yes. The E2 visa allows up to two foreign partners, structured as a 50-50 equal partnership, each person possessing 50% of the ownership, and each person contributing 50% of the financial contribution. So let's say if an investment is 100,000, each investor would contribute 50,000. And based on that structure, both investors can apply for the E2 visa based on this one business, and both investors can bring their dependent family members to the United States as well. This is a great solution for folks who may not have 100,000, and they team up with a partner. They would only need it. They can drastically reduce it by contributing 50%.
Okay. Uh, what types of businesses qualify for the H2 visa?
A lot of different businesses qualify. So this is a very common question because again, the law is very ambiguous on what kind of business
Hmm.
qualifies. Because U.S. government does not want to restrict the type of business. They want to look at every business to see if it could potentially qualify. There are three key factors yeah, in determining whether a business is a strong candidate for the E2 visa. Will it create jobs for American workers? Okay, and
Okay.
is it is the does the business model allow for the strong credibility that it will make realistically make sufficient money, substantial income to support the investor and his or her family member in the United States. A lot of these businesses are startups. So immigration, they have to believe in the future potential. So the business model that is tried and true, successful business model is very advantageous for the E2 visa. So this is especially true in a franchise situation as opposed to
Mm.
independent business because with franchise we're able to present a tried and true successful business model. And in my experience, that has much greater believability, credibility of potential success, leading to higher E2 visa approval rate.
That's a good point you brought up about franchises, and of course, for us, that's a key point because that's what we work with. I know some people they have a misunderstanding that franchises are not compatible with the E2 visa. Some attorneys have told them that, and do you know the reason why?
Yes, this is a really unfortunate misunderstanding, and it's some attorney also have that misunderstanding, and it's unfortunate. The reality is the franchise businesses are very strong for the E2 visa. Um, the misunderstanding comes from the fact that the E2 visa requires the applicant to have full control of the business, full managerial control of the business. You must personally manage the operations of business. Well, as you know, with franchise model, franchisors typically will impose some restrictions on a franchisee to protect their brand. You can't go change
Mm-hmm.
their logo. You have to use their design, everything. That's not to interfere with the franchisee ability to manage the business. It's just to protect the
Yes.
brand integrity. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, as long as the franchisor's restrictions on a franchisee are normal and reasonable and is clearly designed to protect brand and not to interfere with business operations, then in my experience, the franchise business have been very successful and accepting by U.S. immigration officials. So it's just a
Excellent.
rare invariant where the restriction might be overly bearing, then the immigration officer might raise an objection. So we do important part of our service for do a due diligence, review the franchise model, and give feedback to ensure it's not going to be an issue. And as long as we do that, I'm confident it's going to be fine.
Excellent. Okay. Some other examples of businesses that I wanted to talk about their compatibility to the H visa because I know are common questions. A home-based business is one good example. The other one is making real estate investments such as rental properties. Could those be
Yeah.
compatible with the H visa?
Right. So real estate investment generally do not qualify for E2 visa because E2 visa requires the entrepreneur to create an active commercial enterprise, meaning a business that sells a product or service, has a physical business premise, and has a staff of U.S. employees helping
Mm-hmm.
run the
Mm-hmm.
business. Real estate investment is considered passive investment, like real estate investment for generating rental income. That's considered passive, like owning a stock, getting dividends. So that will generally not qualify for E2 visa. There are some exception, property flipping business could qualify depending on the size and scope of the venture. It's a possibility, but
Okay.
general condition, no.
Okay, Bobby, let's just start talking a little bit about the process because I know there is a very specific process on how you go about the H visa application. Can you talk a little bit about what comes first? What do you need to do
Mhm.
first if you decide, let's say someone looks at a business, they decide that's the business they want to invest in, but how does the process flow? What do they need to do?
Sure, sure. So the E2 visa process essentially has two stages. The first stage is making the investment, making the qualifying investment. And then the second stage is applying for the E2 visa with the US government. So the E2 visa law requires the entrepreneur to make the investment first before he or she is allowed to apply for the E2 visa. That's part of the irrevocable financial commitment to the US business. And what this means in the context of a startup business is that once you've signed the franchise agreement, you also have to actually set up the business. Whatever the business setup is required to get it to the point of being at least being close to being ready to start operations, and then you're allowed to apply for the E2 visa. And the logic is that U.S. immigration wants to make sure when they grant the E2 visa, the entrepreneur is either ready or very close to being ready to start operating and generating income. They don't want a business
Mhm.
that still has a long way to go before it opens for business.
Okay, I know that can be a concern for a lot of investors because it's a significant amount of investments that you need to do upfront and then you do your each visa application. So can you talk a little bit about what is the risk of denial? How often does that happen? And what happens when there is a denial? What can be done?
The E-2 visa is a decision made by the visa officer on the qualifications of the investment in the business. So it's not a guaranteed approval. It's an adjudication process. However, at least in my law firm's experience, we have a very high approval rate for clients that follow our instructions on making a strong qualifying investment. So it's relatively rare to see a denial. And even in worst case scenario of a denial, there are recourse. It's not the end of the world. So there's some misunderstanding about that, but it's absolutely not true. There is a way out. So for in event of a visa denial, the visa officer is required to explain why. What is the aspect of dissatisfaction? Is it not sufficient investment amount? Is it needing to hire more employee? Whatever the problem is, they have to explain why. And then the entrepreneur will have the opportunity to make the adjustments, the improvements, and changes, and then reapply for the E-2 visa based on that same business. There's no limit to the number of times you can reapply based on the same business.
So you can basically reapply as many times as you need to in case of denial, right? That's a great
Yeah.
that's
You
great
don't lose your
information.
investment. You don't have to shut down the business. You can figure out why, make the adjustments, and reapply. Another risk
Excellent.
mitigation is that another way of mitigating, reducing the risk for the entrepreneur is to make part of the franchise fee contingent on E-2 visa approval. You know, if you work with a highly experienced franchise consultant that is specialized in E-2 visa, um, she will be able to help you connect you with E-2 visa friendly franchisors who are open to the idea of making at least part of the franchise fee conditioned on E-2 visa approval. That means in the worst case scenario, if the visa is approved, you get a substantial part of your franchise fee back as a safety risk mitigation. So.
Yes, that's something we are used to. There are many franchises we know that are familiar with the E-2 visa, are very used to bringing new partners that come with the E-2 visa, and typically they will have a refund policy. So upon the visa approval or denial, if needed, they would refund part or most of the franchise fee. So yeah, definitely an important point. Another thing is so you made the investment in the new business. What do you need to do next in order to be ready to apply for your E-2 visa? Or basically, how ready does your business need to be to operate before you apply for the E-2 visa?
So at the very least, the business should be close to opening at the time of applying for the E-2 visa. Now, if the business, you need to start the business, you can't wait for the visa issuance before the business starts. For example, you have a retail store, a restaurant, you're paying big rent, and you can't just kind of let the store sit unoperating. You need to start generating income. The business can actually start operating prior to the owner getting the E-2 visa. The only restriction is that the E-2 applicant cannot personally work in the business until he or she gets the E-2 visa. But if he or she has U.S. employees or U.S. business partner, the business can proceed to operating, opening doors, and start servicing customers and generating income. That's perfectly fine. But at a minimum, the business should be at the point of being ready to open at the time of applying for the E-2 visa.
Excellent. I have one last question, Bobby, which is from the time you apply, how long does it take for the visa to be granted?
Sure. That varies depending on where the person applies for the E-2 visa. The E-2 visa is typically applied in two ways, either at the U.S. Embassy in the country of citizenship of the applicant, basically in your home country, or if you're already living in the United States, you could potentially apply for change of visa here in the United States. So depending on which embassy or applying here in the United States, the processing time, government processing time varies. But very generally speaking, just to give you an idea, it typically ranges from 1 to 3 months in most cases, depending on how busy the government is at the time you apply.
Excellent. Bobby, thank you so much. I'll ask you now to just maybe provide some final insights, any advice you want to share with the community that is going to watch your video.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Um, the E2 visa is my passion. This is my specialty, and I love helping entrepreneurs through this entire process and working with amazing franchise consultants like Sheila and Daniel. Um, the current trend with the E2 visa is that U.S. immigration uh, favors businesses that are asset-based, meaning that the type of business model clearly demonstrate expenditures of the investment fund. So I would try to steer away from very, very low-cost businesses, service businesses that can be operating out of the home, and there's not much expenses to show for. The more asset-based business, the more favorable it is to the E2 visa. Secondarily, job creation is a key component of the E2 visa. It is possible to apply for E2 visa before you have hired an American employee, so long as you credibly demonstrate there's a genuine intention of hiring American employees within reasonable time of startup. But in order for the immigration to believe that, it has to be a business model that absolutely requires you to hire employees in order to operate. If it's a business model where the owners can basically run the business on his or her own, that's not going to be very strong. That's going to create some doubts in the visa officer's mind. And lastly, it is really important that the entrepreneur have a clear understanding of the qualifying source of fund requirement. E2 visa is an investment visa. U.S. immigration will look at where your money comes from, making sure the money belongs to you and was acquired by you lawfully with clear, detailed documentation. You want to avoid a situation where you finally get to the point of being ready to purchase a franchise business and realizing at that point in time the money you have either don't qualify or is weak to satisfy immigration because the documentation is lacking in some way. So it's important to, as you start looking at businesses, that you simultaneously start to conduct financial due diligence to make sure the money qualifies, so that when you sign a franchise agreement and ready to buy, you are confident that at that point in time, the money you have is qualifying and can immediately proceed to payment and business starting.
Okay, Bobby, thank you so much. That was extremely informative. Thank you for clarifying all of these questions. They're very common questions that we get asked when someone approaches us thinking about a business for their E2 visa. And to finalize here, I want to share with everyone our contact information. So let me just put this here, make sure everybody sees. Okay, so Bobby's email is bobby@pccvisalaw.com. His phone number, it's a US phone number, 1-626-642-8066. Definitely schedule an initial consultation with Bobby. And if you want to discuss franchise opportunities for your E2 visa, you can reach out to me. My email is spuring@franchisewizards.com. And you can contact me on WhatsApp or phone. My WhatsApp is 1-650-339-6014. Thank you all very much. And I hope this was helpful to you all. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye, Bobby.
Bye-bye. Take care.